Got a package today. What's in the package? What good stuff did I get? That Atlas, United States history. It's gonna be pretty cool. It's gonna have a bunch of nice maps with activities we can use. Hey, maybe I should show you a cool website today too. Yeah. Hey everybody, Taylor Hamlin here from History Forge, and today I'm going to be discussing my last school week, but also how to help students create a bibliography. So this last week we really focused on having students create Google searches, and we did that because we didn't want students to jump right into just randomly searching for information for their annotated bibliographies. Now, I did show the students what an annotated bibliography was, and we talked about it, but we spent the majority of our time saying, like, this is what a Google search looks like. This is what a good website with information looks like. So we talked about the difference between .org, .gov, .edu, .com. We talked about using Wikipedia, but using it in a proper way rather than using it as a source. And so we discussed all these things. And students just gathered more and more information. They took good notes. And by the end of the week, they were actually kind of creating their annotated bibliographies. Students were just mostly pasting their information into the bib. And then this coming week, we're going to focus a lot more on writing the 2 or 3 lines of information that make it an annotated bibliography. One thing I'm not really happy with is a lot of students are asking, how many do I need? How many sources do I need? When can I be done? And that's more of a product of the system that we put students through. A lot of times teachers say, well, you need 10, you need 20, you need 30. Sometimes a teacher will say, well, how many do you think you need in order to complete the project? And that's one of the most vague answers you can give a student that automatically makes them frustrated and confused. So you can't tell them these things. You can't just say, well, you need to do this until you feel like you have enough, because they have no idea what enough looks like. This is the first time they've ever started a big project like this. They have no frame of reference. So the only real way to show them is to give them examples, encourage them to keep going, guide them, help them. If a student is stuck, say, well, it looks like you've used all your searches. What are some new ones you can come up with? Always be guiding and helping them, not just saying, well, you need to do this. You need to find a way. You actually have to help them. It's fine to expect students to have to struggle and have to cross some hurdles, but at the same time, you have to guide them. You have to show them which hurdles they should be crossing. Otherwise, they're going to become frustrated, and in the end, they're not going to do your work. So even though I'm kind of frustrated that many students are saying, well, when can I be done? I don't get angry with them. I don't actually show that. I spend more of my time thinking to myself, okay, what can I do to help them out? What different strategies can I use? What groups of people am I starting to see really have a hard time with this? And so that's why this week we're going to do interventions where I'm going to pull these students from the different classes and I'm going to say, hey, you 8 or 9, come here. We're going to talk for 10 minutes and I'm going to kind of discuss some strategies you can use to find more sources, to find different sources. Get them excited again for their topic. Really focus on the ones who are starting to slow down a little bit. That's what a differentiation is all about, picking out some characteristics, targeting them, and teaching to that characteristic in order to meet some kind of goal. Now, the lecture that we did this week was really awesome. I had a lot of fun with it. I really kind of focused on connecting myth with how history works. And so, for example, we talked about September 11th, we talked about Pearl Harbor, and we talked about Pocahontas. I'm an 8th grade teacher, and so I've been teaching Native American history. It's the beginning of our units. And I've been mostly teaching about, historical concepts with Native American history. Like last week we were doing oral history and also myth. So September 11th was last week. We discussed that moment in history, but also how it connects with the concepts we were talking about in class. And so I brought up Pocahontas, which is a story that all the students know, that I have a great lesson for, and I'll attach it in the links below. And we discussed how a story in the past becomes something different. It becomes less factual, more mythological as time goes on. And so I connect that with 9/11, which is still pretty fresh in the public's memory. Now, my students were never alive during 9/11. None of them were born yet. And so they have no actual living memory of that event. The memories they have are constructed through people that they know, parents, teachers, maybe some older friends, some siblings. That's how they know about the anniversary, and it's only important to them because we keep on discussing it every single year. It gets brought up a lot. So we connected those two events together, and I asked the students, how long is it going to take for an event like 9/11 to become more mythological, similar to the story of Pocahontas. John Smith's diary has a lot of entries in it, and the two of them that we use really focus on the date where he was supposedly captured and saved by Pocahontas, as the story goes. And we actually showed the students the book that he published 16 years later, which has a very different story from what was in his journal. And so the students compared those two things together. And I connected all those events that happened in the 1600s with what was happening today in celebrating September 11th. I asked students, right now, I think most people consider it a pretty fresh historical event, and so we still have many people who see it as factual. We don't have many historians who are challenging what happened. You still have some 9/11 deniers and people like that, but for the most part, everyone pretty much agrees on the facts. But eventually, it's probably going to be a holiday or going to be something that we don't celebrate as much or think about as much, similar to the Pearl Harbor attacks that happened on December 7th. And so we talked about that in class, and the mythological discussion was really great. The students were interested, they were fascinated by it, which really kind of proves a point that I like to think about often. The fact that students should not be taught a list of all these names and dates and facts. Sure, I could have taught them and made them memorize John Smith, Pocahontas, and all these other people, but in reality, that wouldn't have helped them. Instead, students listen to the concept of myth. They listen to the concept that history is constantly changing and fluid, and I use an historical event to prove that concept is true. That's how we should be teaching a history course. It's much better that way, because then students can take that same idea, that same concept of myth, and apply it to their PBL projects. They're going to take them a year long, to their essays that I give them 6 weeks to do, to their daily lives outside and inside of school. That's what we should be doing. One big concept when teaching myth, or probably any big concept that I'm going to teach throughout the year, is they're so abstract that many of my students at the lower levels have a hard time grasping them. Those students need something more concrete. They need chunking. They need smaller bits and pieces of an idea, instead of just being thrown in the deep end of an abstract concept and told, okay, now talk about it or think about it. That's really hard for them to grasp at, and so what they do is they just blank it out because they don't understand it. So I think it's probably their brain's natural defense mechanism to just say, you know what, we don't get it, it's going to hurt our brain to think about, we're not going to think, so block. And unfortunately for me then, they don't understand what's going on, they don't participate in the discussion, and that leads to big problems down the road. And so I need to do a better job of differentiating for that level, preparing them for a discussion like myth, giving them more ideas before, chunking it better, maybe continuing on with them afterwards and giving them more assignments that go along with it. That way it's a constantly recurring idea. But for right now, I'm still thinking about it. If anyone has any suggestions, I would love to hear them. And I would really want to focus on kind of my lower level students, that maybe that bottom 20% who... I wouldn't never call them dumb or anything, but just students who have a harder time understanding an abstract idea. All right, so the last awesome thing that happened this last week was I had a great conversation. Actually, I had great conversations with many teachers. I had a good conversation with our art teacher, and we're going to collaborate now on projects where we basically discussed the idea that students are going to create a proposal, and they're going to give it to him to say, hey, I'm doing this history project in Mr. Hamlin's room. Can I do it in your room too? Because it's going to be an art project. And we drafted what the proposal would look like with all these different details and ideas, and students are going to have to come up with all of it. So we're really excited for that because basically students are going to have a way to do a project in now 2 classes instead of 1. And they're going to get a different perspective from the art teacher in this case. And so that's really going to help us out with just managing students, coming up with ideas for students, and just giving students more time in school to actually utilize and find information, bring it all together, and come up with a project. I had another good conversation with our librarian. We're going to go into her room on Tuesday, and the students are going to find more sources. I had a great conversation with 2 teachers at the high school, and so we're starting to create more of a network and a web of teachers who are all kind of on the same book or the same page. I always say, we're all on the same boat rowing in the same direction, which is what we need to do more of. It's too many times where I have teachers who I talk to about these ideas, and they say, oh yeah, that sounds great. And they never want to help, or they're too busy, or they just want to kind of stay doing the same things that they have. And so it's hard and it's kind of discouraging, but when you do find teachers who are willing to help, nothing feels better, really. I have had such wonderful times with these people already, and I can't wait to see what we're going to do the rest of the year. So on Monday, you can see we're going to do a history lecture like we normally do, but also there's going to be a lot of PBL assignments that are released. I'm going to tell the students to go over a contact list. We're going to re-survey our narrow topics using the funnel method again. And we're going to do a new group survey because I messed up a couple weeks ago and forgot to ask them for their name. But we're going to do all that on Monday, including I have a group that's called Saga that's going to have a discussion due, and so I'm going to help them review each other's work. On Tuesday, we're going to the library where the librarian's going to help students navigate online research tools. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to let the students work on completing many of their assignments. Students are going to spend some time filling out their annotated bibliography. They're going to answer history questions in Google Classroom, and they're going to have primary source discussions online while critiquing each other's discussion work. And Friday, we're actually going to let the students turn in most of their work, or at least turn it in for a check. So their contact list I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at their annotated bibliography, and I'm also going to look at their funnels, which I'm going to put in their portfolio. So overall, the week is really going to be focused on having students complete their annotated bibliography while continuing to narrow their idea, while also completing the daily work of completing Google Classroom questions and critiquing each other's work. All right, so now I'm going to start talking more about the actual documents I'm going to use to guide my students throughout the week. First one, I'm going to show the students the contact list doc, and basically it's just a document with a bunch of tables in it that help students organize all the people that they need to be keeping track of that are going to help them with their project. The very first people they'll probably put down are me, their parents, the librarian, maybe a person in town that they know well that knows something about their topic. So they're going to put those people down. And throughout the year, I'm going to encourage them to reach out to people, talk to museum staff, go to archives, talk to librarians. If you find somebody who is interested in this topic, reach out to them and save their information. Building a contact list, making a network is an extremely valuable skill that historians and social studies people know how to do, and I think it's a valuable skill that I want to teach my students. And so I'm going to show them on Monday, and they're going to turn it in roughly on Friday, and I'm going to probably check it maybe once every few weeks to a month. That way students are constantly showing me that they are in fact looking up these things. Also on Monday, we're going to be doing the surveying the narrow topic list again, and mostly I just want the students to see the funnel idea again, just because now that they have more information, I want them to continue to think, okay, how can my topic keep getting narrow? We need to be continuing to have that conversation over and over and over again. I'll probably continue to talk about it, and up until their projects are going to be presented for the first time in February. And so we're going to have that conversation again. I'm going to have them make another funnel based off all the things that they've read up until now, and we're going to continue to narrow the idea with the goal of every single time we do this, the topic's going to get narrower and narrower and narrower. Now, the last document I'm going to use on Monday is the group survey form on Google that I used last time. I actually messed up. I didn't have them put their name on it, and so I need to do it again. But I also realized, too, that it's a good idea to do this more than once because within the first week, students found out they could get into groups, and the obvious thing happened. Students started grabbing all their friends and getting a power group of their best buddies. And as weeks have gone on, I've been talking more about find people who have different talents, find people who have this similar interest than you, find people you think you're going to work along with, find people who have different personality traits. That way you all can have different ideas and different ways of bringing in something together. And students have actually really responded to that. They've actually been changing quite a bit. And so we're actually going to do a survey group form again just because I really do think groups have changed so much that I'm going to need to anyway. And so that'll be the last document we use on Monday. Friday, everything's going to come in, it's going to be due. And so I'm going to do the annotated bibliography check, and I tell the students this is not the last time I'm doing these. We're going to continue building these things up, and you're going to remove some of your bib information because it's just not useful anymore, and you're going to add information. You're going to constantly improve this thing until you have a final product. Also, we're going to do a contact list show where the students have to actually show me that they found people that they can communicate with. I don't really expect them to find museum or library or archive people, maybe except for in our own district. But once we start getting some more stuff going, I want to promote the idea that students should be going to museums in town or on vacation when they do have a chance to, and bring in more information where they can. And the last thing we're going to do is the narrowing topic funnel. I'm going to ask for that to be due on Friday. That way I'm kind of seeing that students are finding all this information. They're going to come down, they're going to have that final tiny little idea that we're going to use to have as a launching pad for the rest of their research. And again, it's not going to be the final time we see this thing. We're going to probably take that and make it the broad idea and one more time, or maybe even two more times, see if we can narrow it down even more in order to find a very unique perspective, a unique project that they can present at the regional, state, and hopefully national conference. Teachinghistory.org is a great educational site that has resources for elementary, middle school, and high school teachers. The website itself, if you go down and scroll through, has a lot of teaching materials that will help you teach with primary sources, has reviews of websites, and actually has best practices from teachers. If you continue to scroll down, you'll see other tools like history quizzes, a digital classroom, and lesson plans that are going to help you think like an historian. Continue to scroll down, you'll see their contact information. They have several social media sites. Give them a check out and definitely make sure to take some of the lesson plans that they give to you for free. All right, so that's all from us here at History Forge. Thanks for stopping by. If you ever have any questions, please reach out to us on the social media. All my social media stuff's down below. And if you need to look for information, just ask me questions. I know a lot of people have been asking me, hey, where do we find the documents you need or that you've been using in your classroom? I've had people ask me on Instagram, and I just share them with my website. I can also email people if you share an email with me. But historyforge.org is the best place to find all this information. It's where I post my videos. That's where I'm posting my research information. It's where I'm posting all my survey stuff for teaching with primary sources. And I also post my teacher pay teacher account where you can find all that info. And again, if you ever have any questions about anything, feel free to let me know, and I'll help out as much as I can. But that's going to be all from us. Have a great day. Take care. Ninja! Ho!